point, I'd like to bring on Dr. Paulo Fontes. His biography is in the program, and he has done some amazing things in his career. He was with Dr. Starzl, the great transplant pioneer, like from the beginning, and he's done a lot of things and still doing some amazing things at the McGowan Institute. So if you would please welcome Dr. Paulo Fontes.
Good morning. Thank you for having us. I hope that I don't get the same issues that Derek had with the motion. So this is a Monday morning, so I'm not going to show any science or any medical issues. I am going to give a talk that I used to give for business people about money in biotechnology and how you develop companies and what happened as you go through. So don't feel insulted that I'm not a scientist this morning. I'm trying to just talk about how companies go. So this is basically So I have a conflict. I'm a co-founder of a company that's Boston-based, Vertex Bio. I don't make any money out of this company, so I don't have any other conflict with this. Should I point this to him? So there are some issues that we talk about as companies. The most interesting is, this is a little cycle, so I will try to go to the cycle, talk about IPs and how you license this. I didn't do that. And how do I go back? How you start up companies, how they work with incubators, what the financial issues involved in this, most of the regulatory things that we have to talk about it, the whole strategy of having a company. Derek talked a lot about clinical trials. He's an expert at clinical trials, how you validate your data, and then how you get your products out. And in the end, for you investors, most of the time, you want to know how much money are you going to make out of this. So basically, what we have is a cycle. So this is a cycle that we go through. There's some risk and benefits of this, to move on hypotheses, to create some data that you can actually generate some knowledge. And with that knowledge, you might write papers, you might have grants, you might have IPs, you might have new companies, and you might have to invest money because the NIH doesn't do a lot for this large animal work. We have a pretty good foundation at this place. I'm grateful that I've been here for 26 years. Dr. Starzl, here you come, built a foundation here many years ago where we have the benefit of having the largest transplant program in the world when I came here in 1991. And with that revenues, this money was moved by Mr. Romoff and very other managers into the UPMC, which became a large enterprise around the country, the largest academic medical center of the country with $17 billion in revenues. And Pitt also became a very good player at the NIH level, being on the top 5. So we have a lot of foundation here for IPs that have been generated. So how does this thing works? We also have this McGowan Institute that I've been part for several years, was started in the 1990s. We have 230 faculty members. We have a lot of patents that have been filed. We have companies that came out of this. Around close to $500 million have been raised over 25 years on this. And I think it's a very important thing. We were able to create jobs. So I'm old enough that I have kids in college now. I'm always concerned not only taking care of my patients now, but also in creating jobs for people like my kids that will be able to have a good job. I'm sorry for the clicking, I think it. So when you're going to license something that came out of somebody like myself or my group or our team, how does it work? How is this licensing process go? So the technology transfer have these issues that once you have an invention with a license and with a cross license, so how this thing really works is actually a pretty simple pathway. I am sorry that this is not working well. So from the discovery to the licensing process, there's a lot of legal issues that go into the patent itself to create a document that can be used for the foundation of this company. And the company that will take this, it will take this as a license, or they will take as an exclusive license, or they're going to take this as an option to develop this technology down the line. It's basically, sorry, you're not helping me. It is basically this confluence between the business, the science, and the law. So the legal issues and patent is very important. Most of our patents that you pick are actually sent by a third-party office outside that will work this for us. And all this exchanging of brain power that we see on top that goes into these issues. So just to give an overall picture of the market that we have around the country, from 1996 to 2013, there was around $518 billion and added to our GDP with $1 trillion to the industry on, and 5,000 startup companies built on this time. Around close to 4 million jobs created on, as Derek is showing, as we go through the last years and to the last decades, this really ramped up. So you see a lot of growth of these companies over these last years, which is very interesting to see. Are we sitting at this select group that people take all these license earners on? We're not there yet. So there's players around the country. This is a paper from Nature published a few years ago that show the places in the country right now that profit the most for this exercise, that you can license and earn some of those IPs that are getting generated. This is a very interesting cycle. It takes a lot from both sides, and I'm very happy to say that we now have Pat Gallagher running the system here and moving things in a completely different way than we had before, where the legal system actually works for us. In my first patent, it was easy to see, this is in the publishing on Google, that you go to the initial disclosure of your idea. So you have the university running this, and then you have, in some point, you have to find a company to license this. This is a major problem. We went through this recently with the Brookings Institute. We have a lot of patents generated in this region. Not that many have been licensed. Very few of these licenses became a real company, and very few of these became a local company. Example, my company is Boston-based. So we probably have to talk a lot about how can we do this different, that we can keep the companies here in a different way. And then once you start up the company, what do you do with those companies? Another thing that I complain all the time, because these companies require something called incubators. You have some legal assistance, you have to have some management guidance. The idea is great, but you have to have somebody working that actually knows business on. A lot of great talent goes around, but you don't have enough people that will manage the way that you like to. So this ecosystem of incubators, accelerators, and development of the company, we don't have this a lot in Pittsburgh. This is the reason I'm doing this into Boston, but in the end, in the end, there was something that was supposed to drop that it didn't. In the end, most of the companies fail because of bad management, which is sad, because you have a lot of talent on, a lot of people who are great PhDs, good knowledge, great MDs, but they can't run a company. You don't want them to run your company at all. So you have to tell them, you can't be the CEO of your company, go do something else. So this world of incubators and how this moves on, and that how can you provide the cash flow to these people, and what do you really need? I don't think you can see this well, but some people will need cash, some people will need support, some people will need both, and you have to find a way to help them to manage their own business in a way they actually become efficient, because a lot of these very bright scientists, they never had business work in their life, and they will run the company to the ground if you let them just be a scientist. And a lot of them won't. That grow with the valuation of the company have this dual between the equity and the debt that you might have as you go along. So what happened around the world in this business? I mean, how many of these companies go to incubators? Is this something that we invented? No, we didn't, but can I do this without you doing it? So we have around 507 million people doing business around the world. There's a lot of incubators, but not much that are being incubated that we see. Is around 10% of this business that get incubated. So in the end, as we go through this it is hard to move the business down the line, but you have to find a way to get the right people, which is very difficult. There's multidisciplinary talent of people that you have to hire in several ways to move your company through. And as I just mentioned, most of these companies, they will fail because you don't have a good management. And to find good CEOs in our environment here is not easy. I'm going through this myself. It's very difficult. So in this enterprise that you see in this cycle, where you have the companies, the academic players, the funding people providing service, and the research organizations, you got to find a niche that you can put up your own ecosystem within. So you have these entrepreneurs and investors and mentors and all these people that will be working with you or working for you to move your business forward. So another very important thing, obviously, is the money. It's always the money. So can you get your business out of the ground without having to invest a lot with non-dilutive sources on? And in this country, amazingly, yes, there's a lot that you can do in this country. If the clerk helped me, I do a lot of work with the DoD, Department of Defense. I'm grateful for what they do for us and for our troops and how they invest in business. The NIH has a system, the STTR, which is amazing to help new companies like myself. So I have 2 grants on this. And the NIH itself, if it shows up, there you go, there were also some people who have previous grants on them for the proof of concept that they developed that become a part of your enterprise. In the end, it could be. It is clear that you see this curve all the time, that there will be some growth going on from the initial non-dilutive capital, and in which point you have enough momentum or you can negotiate well enough that you can actually get somebody to invest in you, knowing that your company will move forward beyond the so-called value of debt. And the issue ended up being always the money. So can we do this differently in a way that we can? So when we look at the cycle of these companies to get to some that we call the Series A, probably not going to be able to see well, but there's revenue and time that you have to put on. When is the right time to be dealing with the angels, or we're dealing with Series A, when you're going to be talking to VCs, how you move these deals forward? It varies with your technology, with your knowledge of the field, with your network, and with the market that you were working with. It could be a pretty long road that you might not get enough what you think on, and thinking that you're going to get to an IPO in a few years might not be a real option for your company. So when you go to this growth from the seed money to the big company, and you go to this pre-seed and then to the seed and to the Series A, another very important issue that goes through it is you have to find a way to grow and deal legally and with all the issues that go with your company. So you will be through situations where you have to develop your term sheet and have your first contact with some investor to have your first pre-money evaluation, which could be disappointing for most people because they think the company is worth $10 million. It's actually worth $1. And how you plan for this amount of money to be invested, and how you're going to move, what kind of investments you're going to get for what kind of proceeds on the terms, and how you're going to move this forward. So I would tell people early on that the legal and financial guidance that you need to move your company is key, and you're not going to find this most of the time in the academic world. So you have to be close and able to translate this into the business people. So how does the data show about who is putting money on what? So there was an article for the Harvard Business showing that VC is not the norm, is the exception, and there's a lot of other deals that you see around with angel investors, with crowdfunding. I'm not going to read through it because it's not showing well. But in the end, we see in our country this move of other sources besides the VC. Some of these VC firms, greater than $400 million, they don't provide enough return for their members. So this transition between Series A and then going to VC firms could be very tricky. So you have to find a way that you would do this in a safe way that you can actually execute this on your own benefit. So the road to get to the finish line and get to the right money might be different for your company based on your product and based on your market. So a big issue is regulatory. So I always see the FDA as the Everest that you have to go through. In some point you have to go through. If you are doing health science, the regulatory you have to go through. A lot of us do work, and I'm doing this right now, that some of the clinical trials, as Derek was showing, to get some validation are done in Europe or other countries, that you can build some data early on so you can have this early on. But the FDA has basically, and I'm going to just, if I can, show this very clearly, there are two different pathways for devices. I do devices and I do drugs. So both of these different pathways are very different on in how they do. And I would strongly say that I did this. I have lawyers for this. So I have people that used to work on the FDA. They are your private consultant on the legal side, that they will do devices with this IDE, that will have a special way to go to the FDA that's much easier than doing drugs with the IND, with several stages, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials, all the issues with the bio itself. So it can be very long and very tricky, and some people will take between 5 and 10 years to get through the FDA all the way through it. So with my own product now, we've been doing this through the FDA as a device, showing on the left side, with a device with a machine perfusion that we do to preserve organs, but we also have a pathway on the other side that goes as a drug, because we are trying to use now this artificial blood drug for hemorrhagic shock, goes IV to the patients as a drug. So we have these two pathways going on with the FDA right now. And in the first beginning, I am showing this, all the milestones that it takes, and as I'm showing, as you can see it, a lot of this will involve private funding from other enterprises. I'm lucky that I have my own investors on this, but a lot of this moving towards, if you're depending on grants, this area can be pretty flat and take a long time because you don't have enough money to build the data and reach the milestones that you need to get to the finish line. So how do you manage this whole system? With these partnerships, in the end, I don't know if you can read this well, probably not, but the blue is the academic and the green is the industry. All these issues that you're talking about, R&D, IPs, the business development, the regulatory, the marketing, the production, you have to move this from one side to the other of the world, this relationship between academic and the business world, and that can be very difficult if you don't have a system built around you that can let this move through forward. This is a classic thing that we show because of the letters underneath. They are what the DoD called the technology level of readiness, where you go from 1 to 9. As you develop your product from basic research to apply it to the technical echelon, there will be this curve of going up and down with your resources, and how you switch from one side to the other is very important on. In my work with the DoD is very clear. When you go from 6 to 9, they want to make sure that you actually have a real product, which is a frustration of a lot of the DoD players. They invest a lot of money in the science and the publishing papers and writing grants, but they don't have the final product. So you have to deliver something that can be commercialized. So the planning of this cycle goes from these initial ideas that you have and how you have your initial outcomes and how you measure your targets and the kind of results you have. It's a pretty complex system. So this is a very interesting puzzle in the first beginning. You have to build your team and build your enterprise with how you're going to work with this. There will be some cycles that you go through that you have to be able to perform, and again, go to the next cycle and keep this moving. But in the end, I think the best definition for this, it is a chess game. So you have to be very mindful in how you play this, know the rules very well, and do the right moves at the right time to get a good outcome for your enterprise. So clinical trials, Derek said a lot about it, so I'm not going to do anything different than he said. Basically showing that There are ways that we have to look from the methodology point of view that are very important to come out with good answers, and he was very good in showing this. The methodology and how you set up your clinical trial, what kind of questions you have, your patient population, the length of the follow-up, and how you do this is key to have the right data. And if you don't have, you might not get anything. The final issue with commercialization is, in some point, once you produce something, and I'm living through this right now, where are you going to do this? So in this process of commercializing your product, when you go from 6 to 9, there's one point that you have a prototype of something that you have to validate and optimize your prototype, and in some point move to, we call the CMO. And when we go to this contract manufacturing organization, what happened is you have to work with the regulatory to get into it. It's very expensive to do the translation, pay around $2.5 million to do this. And then go to the operations, and then go to marketing planning and be able to execute. So we don't have a lot of CMOs in this market, so I am going to a CMO in Texas. So my company is Boston-based. I'm a faculty at Pitt, and our CMO is in Texas. And probably a lot of people will have the same pathway around. I'm trying to be on time. So, in the end, for you investors, it is important to outline this. What is the money? So when you look at the final, what is the return of investment on this? And it's a pretty basic calculation on, you have your profits, you have invested a lot of some of it is this. You're going to end up with some sales, and you end up probably having some multiples of this on your margins, and your margins have this famous thing between your price and your cost. So how you get through the finish line and how you get the investors happy with what they've done and how you get them involved in more projects is very difficult and very different because of this technology. But some of these enterprises, they're very disappointing. So in biotechnology, you will see return of investment 10x in between 5 to 7 to 10 years. Most of my investors will exit around 7 years. But sadly, a lot of this ended up being a very different outcome. So I would say that it's hard to find the right group of people to work with. You see in this market in Pittsburgh, a lot of these great ideas from the first beginning on the IPs and on the science, but we don't have yet a system that will move this all the way to a bottom line like this, that you can end up with good companies, local companies, creating jobs with good money coming back. Thank you.